Ladies and gentlemen, let me get a good look at him. I think because everyone evaluates your appearance there, Paul Hudrick. I just want to. Yeah, you look about the same. How's life treating you there, Paul Hudrick from the great people of Liberty Ballers? Check out his amazing Twitter profile right there. Look at him, sleeve and everything. Looking awesome.
So
there he is. Yes.
Do we hear the funny story behind that? The sleeve is not a fashion statement, and it's not something I did to look cool. Oh no! I had really bad poison ivy, and I was covering my arm with that sleeve. Yeah, that's all that was.
I thought you were kidding around to try to be like Iverson during that was like a media game, right?
It was a 3-on-3 media game and influencer game done by the people at Red Bull. Our good friend Zach Niner, who was formerly of the Sixers. He organized it, and our good friend Danny Palmel's played in that. And I just said poison ivy, covered it up.
That is so brilliant. If I ever poison ivy and ever do anything athletic again, I'm taking the Paul Hudrick route. I'm going sleeve. By the way, Danny Palmel's can ball. He can play.
He's pretty good. I'll tell you what. My team didn't win a game, and
poison ivy. You couldn't extend. What do you do?
Sure, something like that. No.
So Paul Hudrick joins the show. Liberty Ballers. You started over there a couple months back. How's it going over there with the great people of Liberty Ballers?
It is going awesome. I love my team. I love SB Nation, and it's been a really cool experience, man. We're doing some really good things on the written side, on the podcast side. Tons of great people. I don't even want to list anybody by name because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But we have a lot of really great contributors, and we have a really great podcast. I will mention Jazz Kang is the guy who runs our podcast, and he is awesome and does such great work. And we got to get Marc Farzetta on one of the Liberty Ballers podcasts. I think that's something that's
I'm very busy. I mean, it's not like
you are.
It's not like you come on my show at a moment's notice and just like, hey, no. I'd be happy to do that, of course, man. So we got a lot to get to here, my friend. We got a lot to unpack here when it comes to the whole Ben Simmons thing, when it comes to Joel Embiid 50-point night, it comes to Daryl Morey's conversation with Mike Missinelli recently. A lot to get to here. First off, have you been swayed in any way to think that the Sixers will make a deal involving Ben Simmons by the February 10th deadline with all the information, including the new information from Daryl Morey? Any reason to believe it'll happen by the deadline this season?
If you had asked me before Daryl Morey was on Mike Missinelli, I might have told you that I was leaning 60-40 that he would still be here after the deadline.
Ooh.
And Morey's comments might have literally just flipped that for me.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Because Mark, the stance just softened so much, right? This guy was literally on Missinelli's show. What was it, like 2 months ago, saying we'll keep him for 4 years. Now it's, we're going to do everything we can to try to trade. It's like, whoa, well, that's a completely different zone. And obviously Joel Embiid being Joel Embiid has changed that calculus a little bit, where Daryl Morey says, well, maybe we don't need a top 30 guy. Maybe we can get a top 40 guy who just is a really good fit next to Joel Embiid and is next to the rest of the roster. So given all that, and then he kind of got into the idea of, taking on maybe a young player and some draft picks, so we have more ammo down the line. And the Sacramento Kings were specifically brought up, and he said, "Oh yeah, there could be a deal with the Sacramento Kings." What?
He literally said
to me,
he literally said, "Yeah, I could see a deal happening there. Like there's deals in there." Like he didn't reference the exact deal, but he said there's deals in there amongst the two rosters that could be worked out. And I was like, that's amazing to me. That is amazing that he went that far,
especially when you consider I have been told since the summer, and it was reiterated to me when the rumor came out, that they do not have interest in De'Aaron Fox. That is not a guy they're looking at. That is a guy that if the Kings wanted to move off from De'Aaron Fox would be going to another team. He would not be coming to the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, I don't really have a clear indication of how they feel about Tyrese Haliburton. And when you hear Daryl Morey describe, a young player like Tyrese, maybe we could bring in of that caliber. Well, Tyrese Haliburton and Tyrese Maxey were in the same draft, and they're both guards. And if you redid that draft, they probably are two of the top picks you would take in a redraft of that draft. So I don't think you have to read between the lines too far to kind of see that Haliburton is a guy that they would have interest in. And I'm on board with that. What's tricky to me is if you're looking for a quote unquote top 40 guy, Haliburton is not that yet. I think you don't have to make too strenuous of an argument to say he could be that guy. I don't think that's crazy to say, A guy like a Harrison Barnes, certainly not in the top 40. Buddy Hield, not in the top 40. So I don't know who that player would be on the Kings. My guess would be it'd have to be a third team in order to get that quote unquote top 40 player.
Not to go movie reference on you, but I totally felt it was in the vein of Lloyd Christmas. So you're saying there's a chance when Daryl Morey was getting into the point about how the Sixers have a chance right now. He literally said you could go to Vegas and bet on them. You don't even have to do that anymore, but you can literally bet on the Sixers to win the championship because they have a chance. I don't see them having a chance right now with the way the team is currently constructed. I don't see them being the team to beat in the Eastern Conference. And certainly they were a 1 seed last year. And look, they still got bounced in the second round. So I don't see how he looks at this team right now and says, oh, yeah, we still got a chance with just Joel Embiid.
Yeah, it's a tough sell. He said a 5% chance, which that's probably not crazy, like a 5%, because that's a 95% chance they're not going to do it. So,
right.
So, I mean, from that standpoint, sure. I mean, they have this much of a chance. When you look at the net, I mean, I get it from this standpoint, Mark, a couple different things. I would say, one, the Nets, KD is hurt. He's had injury issues in the past. You don't know what he's going to look like. I mean, clearly, when he is healthy, when he is right, he is one of the best offensive players in the league, has been for the last however many years, over the last decade.
Yeah.
When Kyrie Irving is allowed to play, he is very, very good. James Harden, admittedly, I would say has kind of taken a step back a little bit, but he's still great. He's still really, really good. And if the three of those guys are healthy, they're great. But that's such a big if. If one of them is hurt, Mark, that roster is just not deep enough, I think, to overcome it if one of those guys can't play. And you're looking at a guy like Kyrie Irving, who's going to be a part-time player. Or like I'm thinking too, Mark, like right now, Philadelphia, they have a vaccine mandate, correct? Like you have to be vaccinated in order to go to the Wells Fargo Center. I think that would pertain to the players. So if the Nets and the Sixers met in the playoffs, I don't think Kyrie Irving could actually play in a game. So like, when you look at it from that perspective, I kind of see what he's saying. Now, the Milwaukee Bucks are still great. Giannis is still Giannis. Drew Holiday's having a terrific season. Chris Middleton's a very good player. But even they're a little banged up. They don't have, Robin Lopez being banged up, or excuse me, Brooke Lopez. I always do that. Brooke Lopez being banged up, and them not really having a sufficient big man to kind of take that spot. They lost PJ Tucker in the offseason, who I thought was huge for them in the playoffs. So certainly those teams are perhaps a little bit weaker. I still think they are the class. It's the Bucks and the Nets, but I will say that I think both of those teams are beatable, especially if Joel Embiid is going to be this guy. If he's going to be otherworldly like this, then I mean, they have a chance on most nights against anyone. But with that said, I certainly wouldn't make them the favorites, and I certainly think that Daryl Morey is going to be looking for moves, if not a Ben Simmons move. He mentioned this too, another move to improve this basketball team.
Would you do the deal, going back to the Sacramento Kings, would you do the deal which was Harrison Barnes, Haliburton, and Buddy Hield and a first rounder? Would you do that deal?
So for Ben Simmons? I saw, it was 2 first rounders, and then it was Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, and Matisse Thybulle. I would probably do that. Having Matisse thrown in there hurts me a little bit. Yeah. But when you think about all the things you accomplish in that deal, you get 3 players that all help you right now in Haliburton, Barnes, and Hield. 3 guys that I think all help you right now. You move on from Ben Simmons, who wasn't going to play for you anyway. You get off of Tobias Harris's contract, which is a lot of money over the next 2 seasons, close to $40 million. And then in return, you get a prospect in Haliburton who can help you now and also looks attractive perhaps in the offseason in a bigger deal. And you get those 2 first-round picks, which, again, look very attractive if you're going to go star hunting in the offseason. So for me, I would pull the trigger on that deal, and I think Daryl Morey would too, which makes me think that maybe that deal isn't out there because that's just a lot. That is really a lot to say no to. I get Daryl perhaps wanting that top 40 guy and maybe trying to get a third team in, and maybe that's still what he's trying to do. But for me, that deal, it hurts you defensively, like no doubt about it. To lose Matisse Thybulle, you don't have a solid shutdown perimeter defender. You have Danny Green still in that equation. You have Tyrese Maxey, who's improving. None of the three guys you're getting back from Sacramento are, I would say, they average at best. I would say Hield below average. So that would certainly hurt you defensively, but offensively, it would help you immensely. And since you have Joel Embiid, who's having such a great season and is so good defensively, I think you might be able to overcome it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm more along the lines of that type of deal. And when I heard Morey say the thing about not just top 25, but a top 30, maybe not just top 30, but a top 40, I was like, we keep on going backwards here. We're not going in the right direction. So I think I'm with you there. As much as I love Matisse Thybulle, I think I'm pulling the trigger on that deal as well. To get away from trade conversation for a second here, Tobias Harris, what's the deal? Like, what's going on there? He talked a couple of weeks ago about how he was still feeling the effects of COVID. He had the shoulder issue he was still dealing with, trying to get through that. He had a decent game against the Orlando Magic. Still not a great game, but a decent game against the Magic. If he is playing at all at the level that he was even playing at last year with Ben Simmons still in this lineup, this is still a much different outlook for the Sixers team, and you're really looking to add pieces while keeping keeping Tobias Harris on this team. So what do you think is the deal right now with Tobias Harris?
I think health is the biggest thing. I mean, it's got to be, because like you mentioned, Mark, he was a borderline all-star last year. People here were flat out mad he wasn't an all-star. So for that flip-flop to now be at a point where he's getting booed pretty much on a nightly basis, like, it's pretty clear something's not right. Something has gone awry, and I think certainly health is a big part of it. You mentioned, he had COVID. He says he still has some lingering effects from that. He still feels like he has a cold almost every day. He had the flu not long after that. He had a hip issue sandwiched in between that, and then, as you mentioned, his shoulder tendonitis, which that's not going away. Like, shoulder tendonitis is going to stick with him. Like, that's not something that you just snap your fingers or, you give it a couple. No, like, he's going to be dealing with that possibly for the rest of the entire season. So I think it's health. And for me, Mark, Tobias Harris is a proud guy. He's been an adorable guy throughout his career. But at what point, if you're Doc Rivers, do you kind of look him in the eye and say, man, like, maybe you're better off just resting. Like, maybe you're better off healing your body, making yourself feel better. Like, it's commendable that you want to help this team.
Sure.
We respect you as a player, as a teammate, that you want to go out there every single night. You are a guy who wants to play 82 games. You've done it multiple times before. I get all that. But perhaps the best way you can help the team right now is to go sit out, get healthy, and then come back when you're 100% so we can really use you for the stretch run and have you in the playoffs. So I like I said, it's commendable. And I think the one thing, you could say whatever you want about Tobias Harris, the guy really does play hard. The guy works hard. He works on his game. He tries to add something to it. He makes an awful lot of money. That's a totally fair thing. He probably, he is. He's overpaid. He's a near max player and he doesn't produce near max output. But I think this is just him trying to push through something when maybe he shouldn't be trying to push through it.
I look, folks, I think my audience knows I'm not professional enough to do a pre-interview or have a producer do a pre-interview or anything like that. Paul, I've been banging that drum for the last month. Like, this isn't benching Tobias Harris. This isn't like he sucks, bench his ass. Like, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying go away. Like, sit in your house, sit in a whirlpool, eat fruits and vegetables, whatever you got to do, crush a bunch of kale. I don't know. Whatever healthy people do. And get healthy, and then come back as that caliber player that you were last year with this Sixers team, and I will be a happier man for it, because Tobias Harris isn't a guy that I necessarily would boo. He's a guy I root for, actually, because I think he's got a great attitude. I don't think it's a lack of effort. I think it's a lack of ability right now. And like you said, health mainly with him. So I'd want him to come back healthier than ever and better than ever. And I think the Sixers are looking at it right now, and I think he's looking at it also as we're already down Ben. Matisse Thybulle's hurt now. We don't know who's going to be leaving and be in and out of the lineup with COVID protocols. I got to be there. It can't all be on Joel. And it's like, I think you're helping Joel more if you actually take a break and come back in the second half of the season, I don't know, refreshed and feeling better.
Yeah, and like I said, I think on top of that, he is a very good teammate. I don't think you'd find a single person in that locker room that would have a single bad thing to say about Tobias Harris. So yeah, I would think that if he did that, if he were to go to Doc Rivers and say, hey, I need a break. Like I need to take a couple weeks off because I'm not 100%. Doc Rivers would say, okay, great. We'll figure it out. Like we'll we've won games without Joel Embiid. We've won games without you. We've won games without like, we'll figure it out. We'll get by. And especially if we have Joel Embiid, we have a shot every single night when that guy is playing. So like, and I think every guy in the locker room would feel the same way. Like if it was to that point where Tobias felt like I'm not healthy enough to help this team and I need to take a step back, I think he'd have the full support of everyone in the locker room.
Mm-hmm. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Last thing for you, my friend. When it comes to Joel Embiid, I know we feel like we always run out of adjectives to describe this guy and how great he really is. And then he goes and drops 50. Granted against the Magic, but ain't the question. It's 50 points. How do you describe this guy? Like, what's the best way to describe how good he is to someone that maybe hasn't discovered him yet?
People throw around that word unicorn to describe guys, but like he is a freaking unicorn. Like there is nothing like him that's ever existed. Doc Rivers last night said he compared it to, he said he's a combination of Hakeem Olajuwon and Kevin Garnett.
Oh my God.
Mark, comparing him to one or the other would have been a sufficient enough compliment, but to compare him to two of the greatest big men to ever play basketball, a guy like Doc knows Hakeem. Doc played around with Hakeem in Hakeem's time. He coached Kevin Garnett, so he knows those guys extremely well. And then on top of that, like you saw Drew Hanlon, his trainer, put out the video where he's taking shots like Kobe and Michael Jordan, and it's like this is unreal. And I saw another thing too, not to like steal from a bunch of other people to describe, but like Matisse Thybulle was on JJ Redick's podcast, and he mentioned that it's almost like this blend of like eras where he can be Shaq and he could just bully people and beat the crap out of them and just pin them and dunk right in their faces. But then he also can take people. Last night he did that coast to coast where he puts the ball behind his back and then has that beautiful finish for an end one. And it's like, this is not what 7 foot people do. And it's not just 7 foot, Mark. It's 7 foot. And what you don't even want to guess a number, 280 plus, I guess we said. But to have that combination of size, of skill, he takes threes, obviously. He's shooting those at above league average clip this year. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. I don't know that we'll ever see it again. And then I think his defense isn't talked about nearly enough. I think you could make an argument it's him or Giannis is like the best two-way player in the NBA. I don't know. Like, I would say overall body of work, you would have to put Giannis ahead of him. But right now, I don't think anybody is playing better two-way basketball than Joel Embiid. It's mind-blowing to me. Like, I think of all the things that Sixers fans have gone through, right? And everything that it took. And some people will say like, oh man, all the process and everything. And all you got out of that was Joel Embiid. All you got out of that was maybe the best player on the planet. Like, so to me, all of that's worth it because you have this guy here in his prime. And it's crazy to think about too, Mark, when I think back on his career early on, and like people were wondering if he was ever going to play a game when he came to the league and missed his first 2 years. I'm at a point now where he's 28 years old. He's in the best shape of his life. And I just see that game. I think you're old enough, Mark, with me to remember like late career Michael Jordan when it was just fadeaways all day. And that's what he did. He just fade away, just killed people in the mid-range. And I see Joel Embiid's offensive game actually aging really, really well. So we talk a lot about his prime and wasting it and blah, 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 blah. But I think he is literally just entering it right now.
During the second half of that answer, I couldn't help myself because you said that we had kind of already said the word unicorn surrounding Joel Embiid. And I couldn't remember the difference I couldn't remember if a unicorn had wings or if it just had the horn. And I remembered a Pegasus has the wings. And I'm like, is there a combination of both? And sure enough, there is. Pegasus is the flying horse. I don't think it necessarily has to have the unicorn horn, but some do, as Google Images is telling me, and I'll scroll that later. First time I ever Googled that. And I'm going to tell you right now, Joel Embiid, no longer a unicorn, even more special, Pegasus. I'm going with Pegasus.
Okay. I'm in for that. Your Google search history, I hope your wife doesn't look at that because that could be really weird for her.
Yes. Why am I getting Pegasus? Pegasi? What would be the plural? Anyway, Paul Hudrick, Liberty Ballers, you do a phenomenal job, man. If you're a Sixers fan and you're not following Paulie, what the hell's the matter with you? That's all I have to say about that. And that sleeve right there, folks, covers up Poison ivy for future reference. Did you have aloe under it? I have to know. All right, don't answer that. Anyway, Paul Hudrick, great catching up with you.
Hield, but it looked bad. Anyway,
good enough. And little Miles is good. Your little son, your little boy.
Miles is great, man. He is 8 weeks old today, and he is amazing. He's awesome.
Awesome, brother. Paul Hudrick, Liberty Ballers, joining the show. Paulie, thank you so much, brother.
Anytime, Mark. You got it, buddy.
The great Paul Hudrick joining us on the Ruffman Orthopedics guest line.